Hey folks, it's your host Julian. This week I sit down with Josh Taback, animator and director on The Simpsons, as well as Randon Cunningham, ninth grade ninja. We chat all things Simpsons, including his first day at Film Roman and climbing up that Simpsons ladder. We also discuss some of his favorite characters, and we talk about everyone's favorite Ned Flanders moment, Stupid Sexy Flanders. Don't forget, if you're enjoying this show, reach out to us on social media and tell us what you think. You can find us across all social media platforms at In My Head Pod. If you want to go a little plus ultra for us, leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and tell us what you think. Enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to What's My Head podcast. I'm your host, Julian, and today I'm joined by Josh Taback. Josh, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate this one, man. It took a little while to set it up. It only took a couple hurricanes, couple people passing, sadly, to make sure we got this one off the way. But nonetheless, man, we're here. And I found out about you, a couple times I've done some deep dives into the Simpsons lore. A show that I've had a lot of fun with revisiting. This show is as old as I am, right? Came out the
Oh,
same
geez.
year. 1989, man. And what's fun is I've actually been able to go back and rewatch this show with my oldest son and getting to see his reaction to how I wasn't allowed to watch this show when I was younger. My mom didn't want a son like Bart Simpson, and my mom didn't want somebody like Angelica Pickles from Rugrats. So getting to like have to sneak away and watch this and then watch him like openly watch this shit in the wild, it's kind of crazy, right? Because I feel like
How
that
old is
parent,
he?
he'll be 13 tomorrow.
Okay,
So,
very good.
and boy, oh boy, does time fly, ladies and gentlemen. But getting to see him experience The Simpsons, man, has been fun. So I got to imagine with a couple of the folks that I've had on, most of them were fans of the show before they got onto the show. Were you a fan of The Simpsons before you got into The Simpsons?
Oh yeah, I was in
Yeah.
college. Well, I was in high school. I was a senior in high school in 1989. But it was on. It took a little bit for it to be on TV though. Um, I don't know if that Christmas episode was the pilot and then it just ran like a normal season. I think there was a little gap in between that. But it was on when we were in college. I don't remember watching it a ton, but it, I tell you, man, I was on The Simpsons for 15 years.
Mhm.
And between watching it beforehand and knowing it all by heart and then working on it, still being a fan, and then there was this weird surreal thing that would happen. Me and my friend Tim Bailey and I shared a cubicle. Who you interviewed?
Yeah.
Um, we shared a cubicle for 4 years, and we were kind of like the Bickersons. Like people would ask us to come up to us later. Um, are you and Josh fighting? Did you get what? Did something happen? And he's like, what are you talking about? No. And he's like, Josh, they think we're fighting. I'm like, what? No. Like we just he's from Boston, I'm from New Jersey. So we're just always kind of like biting at each other when we talk. But anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, so there are rewrites and great lines get cut. But while we're doing the show, when we're making it, we have it on tape. Like we hear the lines and we start to think they're really funny and we memorize the lines. So I couldn't even remember. I quote a lot of lines that weren't even on the air
Mhm.
that were just, I'll tell you one later. It's a really great one. But I was living in my fandom, creating my fandom. And then you'd hear people in restaurants or on the bus. When am I taking the bus? Out in public or whatever, talking about The Simpsons, and I'm sitting there like, they don't even know who I am. They don't know. And only once I think that I hear someone directly talking about a scene I
Yeah.
did.
What'd
But
that feel like?
it was really cool. It,
Yeah.
you
Was
know,
it
it was,
surreal?
yeah. The surreal part about it. I mean, it wasn't surreal in the fact like the world knows about what I do because it's as far as identifiable cartoon characters. There's Mickey Mouse and Homer and Bart Simpson. I mean, if you
Yeah.
really think about it, like worldwide.
Hmm.
So it doesn't surprise me when people talk about things like that. Um, but the surreal part was that I'm sitting right here. I'm their celebrity, but I'm not. Like they don't even know that. Like, and then I think about people like Nick Ranieri who did Sebastian the Crab and The Little Mermaid. He was the supervisor on that, and it's that's another character that the world knows, and Lumiere, you know,
Yeah.
um, and be our guest, like Nick Raniere. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not sure if James Baxter or Nick Raniere did the actual big uh, part of that song where it was like "Be our," from like
Yeah.
or course by course, like whatever. Um, but all these animators from the Disney Renaissance have influenced the animation world to the point where Pixar was created, and say what you want about CG, but it has influenced, and um, the energy from that went into the work that has been done with that. I'm sorry, I'm distracted. My cat's finally climbing on the thing I put there for her 3 days ago. Um, she's probably all distracted because I'm talking. Um, you know, and and the Pixar movies and then the Disney movies themselves, like they did have influence. And I don't even just mean Disney, because DreamWorks put out a good number of stuff. There's some other things that were going on at that time too. Influenced regular cinema. Like the world now, like has so much so that the movie musical had that resurgence, and the animated musical has now died down. Like it peaked so high that it now came down the other side of the pendulum swung. Um, and nobody except people like us even know who the heck these people are.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that someone like Glenn Keane, who animated The Beast, and uh, he didn't work on Lion King, Tarzan, Aladdin, Eric Goldberg, who
Pocahontas.
did the
Yeah.
genie, like the genie, for crying out, like the world knows these characters, and they're just they go to work. Well, nowadays they work from home, but they sit at their desk, they do their job, then they watch TV, they have their sandwiches, and then they talk to their families, and then they do it again tomorrow, and then they'll walk right by. Someone may have had a life-changing experience because of the Little Mermaid or whatever, and they may walk by one of those animators. Glenn Keane, Ariel. I can't believe I was blanking when I was talking, but I was trying to remember my point. Yeah, I'm getting to that age where it's just like, oh, but my mouth just keeps going, but my brain is like concentrating about something else. Um, and they don't realize they just walked by the person who changed their life.
Hmm.
Unless they watch the extras on the DVDs and stuff like that. They're starting to have extras again on streaming, which I'm glad about. But
I am too,
um,
because that was the big point
yeah,
of buying DVDs, man, is getting to see the director's cut, getting to see what
right,
they
right,
thought.
right. Well, one thing too, like when DVDs started to come out, there was this big thing about like DVDs aren't, you're not going to be able to step frame on DVDs. So I went nuts on eBay buying all these animated movies on Laserdisc, and I bought a Laserdisc player. You know how many times I watched those movies?
Probably zero.
I think I watched one or two of them,
Yeah.
but I had them because I mean, in college, I wore that Little Mermaid videotape out backwards and forwards, like,
Yeah.
trying to study how did they do that? How when his jaw drops, how does that drop? And, like, what's the slow in and slow out? And, like the drag and all that stuff. I learned so much, by, by step framing it. So the idea that we would no longer be able to study animation in such a way made me really upset and angry back then. Um, but I got over it. And then now you can step frame, and now you can get it. If you have a QuickTime movie, you can just do it that way. I mean, it's just, you know,
What was the first DVD you bought? You remember your first DVD?
holy cow. No, I don't. Whenever I hear someone say about CDs, the first CD I had was, I think, Meet the Beatles or With the Beatles. My cousin's husband got it for me, and I didn't know how to take it out because I'd never seen it before. You put your finger down, you push down, you pull it out. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to break any. I didn't even know that. I didn't. I tried to pull it off the sides, and it wasn't coming, and I thought I was going to snap it. And I didn't listen to it that night because I didn't know how to take it out of the thing. But the first CD I bought was Billy Joel's Russian concert album.
Yeah.
But DVD, I don't know.
First one I ever
I don't.
bought was Joe Dirt.
Oh no.
Yeah, David Spade's Joe Dirt, and it was funny because it was a Joe squared, so it was Joe Dirt and Joe's apartment. I don't know if you remember that one, but it was with the little dancing and talking cockroaches. I think it
Oh
was New York,
yeah.
New Jersey. Yeah, so those were
Yep.
the
Yep.
first two DVDs I bought. And since we're talking about CDs, the first CD I ever bought was Will Smith's Big Willie Style. That was the first CD
Okay.
I'd ever owned. There's just something about that time where I can think, man, it was so magical. Um, but getting it back, and I asked Tim and I asked Brad. Did you get a chance to work with Brad?
Brad Bird.
No, Brad Abelson.
Oh, Brad Abelson. Yes.
Yeah. So, I had him on right before Tim, and I had Mark on, Mark Kirkland, and I asked him all the same question I'm about to ask you. None of them brought up the first time they got to at least hear somebody talking about something they worked on out in the wild, the zeitgeist. It was usually, what was it like to see your name in the first time you got to see your name in your trailers or credits, excuse me. But before we get to that topic, I want to circle back. When they're talking about the scene that you worked on, did that register to you at that time? Obviously, you're working on that show. It's the zeitgeist. Simpsons is the biggest thing next to Mickey Mouse when it comes to cartoon and facial recognition. Did that register that, like, that's somebody out in the wild that's watching my show, watching the show I work on, the characters I work on, the scene? Did it register then, or did it take a little while for it to kick in?
You mean the novelty of it?
No, just the fact that somebody out there is absorbing your work, and then it's somebody that's not in a
Oh well.
controlled spot.
Yeah. No. I mean, at that instance that you're talking about, I had been working for the show for a while,
Mhm.
so being my work and the work of my colleagues being recognized out in the wild wasn't a new thing. I mean, it was on
Yeah.
shirts, posters, and this, that, and the other. But trying to think back, I was just sort of I was young and I was new to the industry, and I had friends working at Disney, and I had friends working at DreamWorks, I had friends working at Warner Brothers, and their movies and their projects were coming out, and it was just like, I was in LA. I came from New Jersey by way of Philadelphia when I went to college, and just the surrealness of the wild, knowing, like, being connected to all that,
Yeah.
and then sometimes running into celebrities at work if they came by, or for whatever reason that maybe not just a celebrity sighting out in the wild or something like that. Man, you're asking me to go back, and I told you I'm having a midlife crisis. I can't remember this shit anymore.
Well, here, let's
Um,
let's
I,
take it one step further. Well, let's take it a little bit easier question, then we'll ease into that question. So hold on to that one for just a second. So,
so what I'm let me just what I'm trying to remember is the feeling of that newness of celebrity to a certain extent.
yeah.
But what were you gonna just ask me?
Oh no, I was gonna say if that one was a little bit, you wanted to ease into that one a little bit more, man. What was your first day like? So you remembered that first feeling being like that, but what was your first day? I always like first day questions because
Um,
it's everybody differently.
yeah. Well, there's my first day at Film Roman, and then there's my first day at The Simpsons. My first
Let's
day
do
on The
both.
Simpsons. What's that?
Let's do both. Are they both pretty good stories? I mean, I like hearing these briefs.
My
I like hearing
well, my
first day
first
stories.
day on this. Yeah, my first day on The Simpsons. I probably sat at my desk and got settled, and they gave me some assignment, and I did some drawing.
Yeah.
And that was about it. And I actually started, I think, as a prop designer for a few weeks, if not just a couple weeks, and then they were like, "Oh, yeah, we can give this guy regular stuff."
Yeah.
And then the first episode I worked on was the PTA disbanded,
Hmm.
and the first famous scene I did was actually from this show where it's Jasper with the paddle. You do something wrong, that's a paddling. You do something else, that's a paddling. Oh, you better believe that's paddling.
That's pretty
So
good,
that was one of
man.
my. Oh man, you don't even know. And when the actors strike a few times, we all were like practicing our
Yeah.
impersonations and stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah. We can do those voices like. I don't know, it's been let's see, 20, it's been 13 years since I've worked on the show, and like it's all of it's just burned into my brain, like, you
Who's your best
um
impersonation as far as characters go then? Who can you pull off the best?
probably Mo.
Yeah?
Yeah, but what's some stuff that he would say? It's just like, yeah, all right there, Midge. Yeah, it's home of there, Midge. Or a car hold, a garage, a garage. Ooh, what do you call it? A car hold. All right, we all do a pretty good. We all do a pretty good Homer. All you have to really do is kind of, I don't know, do what I'm doing right now. I think, boy. And then I do surprisingly good Marge. Someone told me. Well, if loving my kids is lame, then I guess I'm just a big lame.
Yeah, those are really good, man. I
Yeah,
really like when people can knock out impersonations.
yeah, because we had the voices. I mean, we have the voices now. It's a little quick timer in the file, but like it would be like but if loving my kids is lame. If loving my kids is lame. We'd be hearing, and then we'd be like, can you put your headphones on? Because we all had tape recorder. I just came across my tape recorder from those days the other day. I was like, should I keep this? I'm like, yes, keep this. This is a novelty.
Hey guys, it's your resident cartoon junkie Brandon Jones here, asking you to have a listen to my Animation Destination podcast. It's an animation celebration podcast, and it's full of all sorts of stuff about anime and cartoons and voice acting and all that sort of thing, and just a really all-around celebration of anything animated. So come on by and check it out. We've got fan episodes of your favorite animes to your most obscure cartoons on Netflix that no one's ever heard of, and just really love talking about it. You can subscribe to us on Spotify and iTunes and anywhere else you can get your podcasts from. So stop on by, subscribe, and stay tuned for the Animation Destination podcast.
But I still have some of those cassette tapes too. They're probably in a box with Mark Simpson stuff.
I mean, that'd be pretty
But
dope to listen to, but yeah.
my first day. This is a long story, so I'll tell it short in a short version, and you can ask me to elaborate. I drove cross. So I drove out here cross country the day after the O.J. Simpson chase.
Jesus Christ.
Me and my mom were watching it in the kitchen, and we didn't. And because it's in California, I didn't realize the time difference, and it was dark. It started to get dark out. And in New Jersey, you don't see car chases on television unless they're a television show. So we were waiting for something to happen. We didn't realize nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
So at some point, I'm like, oh my god, it's dark. I gotta go to bed. I'm going to California tomorrow. So I went to. I drove out there with three friends, three of my buddies, in my Ford Taurus. They just came out for a cross country drive, and then they flew home. Made it all the way across the country without any sort of fender bender or anything like that. And then my buddy drove me to work so they could have the car. Oh, I had like a few days before. I probably had about a week before I actually started. And the roads are different out here from where we grew up and stuff like that. So like we were going. He was driving me to work. I was wearing reasonably nice clothes. Nowadays, I would almost feel like I'd be wearing a suit. I might have been wearing a sports coat with like the t-shirt underneath, which was the style at the time. But so he goes to make a left-hand turn, and he was in the middle lane, and someone in the left-hand lane, almost T-boned us, took off my front bumper into the street. And then, we did all we needed to do there, and I picked up my bumper and put it into the car window, and then he drove home, and he felt horrible, and then I walked into my first day of my career for
It's
the
all
rest of
uphill after that,
maybe
right?
the rest of my life. Yeah, all uphill from there. So I go in and I meet with my now one of my best friends, who was my mentor at the time, Jim Schumann, and I told him what happened. He's like, "What?" He's like, "Do you need to go?" I'm like, "No, I mean, no, I'm not going anywhere." So I had an internship at Film Roman for that summer, and then towards the end of the internship, I they had me take a test for the critic. Remember that show? And then a test for the Simpsons, and they put me on the critic, and I was doing. I don't know if I was doing some design work. I was doing I was doing layouts, and I was animating the characters a little bit, but I was only there for a couple months, and that was in September through November. And then the line producer comes over to me, and he's like, we don't have money for you anymore. And I'm 22 years old, and I'm looking up at him like, okay, what does that mean? Like, so would you want to go downstairs on The Simpsons? I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then so I went downstairs on The Simpsons that November, and that was it. I went on hiatus in January, and I came back in May. During that hiatus, I did try to get into Disney, because I wanted to be a feature animator and stuff like that. Didn't in the long run. I'll come back to this. You can ask me about it later, hopefully. I didn't know how good I had it on The Simpsons during a certain period. After a while, when it was just like, we're not doing full animation, I want to do full animation. But for all intents and purposes, we were doing full animation. Like we were basically doing key posing, key animation. We were staying on model. We were doing everything that those animators did. We just weren't putting the finishing touches on it like they get to do. And then when I guess I'm answering this question now, and then much later on, when Disney was the traditional animation department was scuttled, and there was this massive not exodus or movement for everyone's trying to now get a job. I was on the receiving end of looking at those resumes and reels and stuff like that. So, but not only that, but they were all over the internet because everybody was putting out their reels. And I'd see some beautiful, like incredibly beautiful animation. It was like 2 seconds here, 3 seconds there, 5 seconds here. And it was just nothing from some animators, not all of them. But we all idol worship these supervising animators who create these performances and stuff like that. But back then, the way that those things were structured, it took you years to get to that point, unless you were some savant that was. And I know of a few people who kind of jumped the lines and stuff like that, but there was a political hierarchy and this, that, and the other. So I was seeing all these reels of the type of animation that I have been longing to do, but it was just these little snippets that I didn't feel like I would have never been able to sink our teeth in that. Whereas on The Simpsons, you were assigned scene 12 through 30, everything in it.
Yeah.
Every character, every background. I mean, we roughed out the backgrounds, and then the backgrounds were given to background layout artists who then took our rough shapes and turned it into the nice looking background that you could see, fix any perspective that we were wrong with and stuff like that. But like we would lay that all out, all the characters doing all the performances and all that stuff. And it was throughout. So you'd really get a sense of a performance from like over anywhere from like 8 to 20 scenes. But when that was happening, I wasn't even on the show anymore, and I was doing storyboarding at that point and stuff like that. So I wasn't even necessarily doing character layout, which is essentially key animation. So I'm really glad I kind of kicked myself for not realizing how good I had it, that I was animating. I animated scenes that had 100 drawings in them. I animated action, this, that, and the other. I did, all these things. I mentioned earlier a few of my claim to fame scenes like that, but my legacy apparently is I did the stupid Sexy Flanders section. People are getting tattoos of stupid Sexy Flanders. There's a maquette of him out there now somewhere. Like, yeah. So, and it's funny, but like, it's an easy joke. He's really buff, and he's wearing it's a bit, it's a slight. It's making fun of Homer being kind of homophobic, but not really. But it's like, it's male machismo. I don't want to look at another male. So, but I was really happy to be on that show because I happened to be the only one on that show who skied, and the whole first half of the show took place at a ski resort, and no one knew how to ski. I was the only one, so I asked if I can get the skiing scenes because I'll make them look real. So that's why I got that section, because when Homer has to go from accidentally skiing down the hill backwards to turning around and all that stuff like that. So like, and then the other joke was him getting hit in the crotch with moguls, which is a silly joke, but you can't be a good getting hit in the crotch joke. So it's just interesting that and if you look at my website and stuff like that, I actually have a blog post of the whole stupid Sexy Flanders stuff with the drawings from it and everything.
That's really cool, man. It's good to know like where that one came from. It's like I said, I had to sneak around to watch the show when I was younger, but getting to when I would deploy, you could go down on the ship and then you could go to our little media libraries and you could rent out box sets, DVDs, movies, whatever. And most of the time, studios would send movies that were barely out in theaters or weren't even out in theaters yet. They'd send them to the deployed sailors and soldiers and shit like that, and you can go and rent it out, and your whole division could watch it before it kind of hit the movie theaters.
Oh,
And
neat.
this is where I got to experience like the full length of The Simpsons over a decade ago. I'm just sitting there watching every box set. Fuck, man, I think they were probably on like season 25, maybe 24, somewhere around there when I first started. So they had every season. I would just sit down there after I got out of work and would just watch these things. And it was something that I looked forward to. And like I said, getting to watch it now with my son, getting to sit over there and see if the same thing that I would have laughed at if I snuck around at 13, 14 and watched The Simpsons because my mom didn't want me to watch it. Getting to see him laugh at possibly the same shit I laughed at, I just find it very interesting and very fun. I had told Tim and Brad both this, and Mark as well, that The King of the Hill was always my show. When it came to adult animated cartoon, it's just like there's something about that one. Like I quote that show at least 3 or 4 different quotes in there. It's always, "I don't know you. That's my purse." When Bobby kicks the dude in the nuts, when he goes to Y and learns, it's Pocket Sand and Dale Gribble or Rusty Shackelford, depending on him. And so there's certain
Right.
things that are just like there. But The Simpsons, I equate it to this. When I was younger, I didn't realize you could like multiple genres of music. I figured you just had to pick with one and that's what you were stuck with. That's the kid that likes X, Y, and Z, or that's the kid that doesn't like this. So I treated King of the Hill and The Simpsons when I was younger like Biggie and Tupac. Either you were with Tupac or you were with Biggie. You couldn't do both, right? And it wasn't until I got older and you realize like, oh, you can like Biggie and Tupac? Well, fuck, Josh. That means I get to like The Simpsons and King of the Hill. So for something that I pushed away for so long, and then, like I said, revisiting now as an adult, I think I'm better for it because not only do I get all of the sexual innuendos, not only do I get all the jokes that would have went over my head, I get to see the brilliance that you guys had and still have on that show. I know the later seasons tend to get a kind of shit on from time to time. From time to time, it's just fans like what they like and they don't like what they don't like. But like I said, getting to see these later seasons with my son and getting to like absorb all of this shit, I really feel like I just missed out as a kid getting to watch this show because you guys were hitting on such a level that I don't think mainstream media, obviously we all know Bart, we all know Homer, but I don't think like the real mainstream tycoons or anybody that was really watching the medium back then understood like how important the show was to American culture, American pop culture.
Yeah. I think the people in power, if you want to call them that, just looked at it as that cartoon that time. Whether or not they were like, George Bush Sr. complaining about it or whatever, it was just silly, crass
Yes.
stuff. I would say season 3 through 10
Mm-hmm.
are some of, if not the cleverest written television in history. Those are the seasons. Those are the prime seasons.
Mm-hmm.
After 10, I'd say there were maybe out of a season of 26, 22 to 26 episodes, half of them were probably, or a quarter of them were okay, and then the other another quarter were clunkers, and then one half was still great, and then whatever happened. But there was nothing smarter or more clever or more well written. One thing that I'm finding now in a lot of shows, not even just animation, but live action as well, is when you start to have any sort of ensemble, even especially if you start out with an ensemble, like every character's got to get their due in every episode. I mean, it might be contractual because nowadays too they got to have celebrities, and if a celebrity is going to make a point, going to devote their energy to an animated project, I want to make sure I'm in every episode this much, to the detriment of the scripts, because you'll watch The Simpsons and you'll see Bart like once or twice, if at all, sometimes. It's all about Lisa. It's all about, the B plot. I think later on it started to be like B plots for everyone, but but that waters down story, because what ends up happening is it always ends up being overwritten. So you have an A and a B and possibly a C plot that are all like, let's say that's really well done. Let's say they do a good job of it. Not always the case, but usually there's a strong A plot and a not so strong B plot. But let's say they're all strong, maybe even a small C plot. But to give them their due, it's going to be overwritten.
Mm-hmm.
So either one, so we end up doing more work and then it gets chopped out. So we do work we didn't have to do. Or if that gets remedied in the script phase, then things get shortened and cut out. So now none of them feel like an A plot. The emotional arc that you would have had is now sucked out of it, or just kind of like lilts, because you had to give it all equal time,
Mm-hmm.
because you had to trim them all down. You can't just trim one down; you have to trim them all down. And as a result, the two or three good stories that you had are now just okay, because you had to have 3 stories in that episode.
Yeah.
But you watch those years in The Simpsons. I mean, that Troy McClure show, Fish Called Selma. Man, just shows like that. One of my favorite episodes I ever worked on was The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace. I did a lot of work on that show. I think that was probably like, I don't want to say it was my pinnacle or my peak because I worked there for so long. I had many pinnacles and peaks. But like, I think I was just cooking because I remember getting a lot of work and getting done quickly. I probably just hit like a creative verve where you've heard of diminished returns, when you're working too hard, like the opposite, like exponential returns.
You get a flow state.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of animated scenes with a lot of physical comedy. I did acting, and I was also a little attached to it because it dealt with Thomas Edison. And since I'm from New Jersey, our field trips, I probably went to the Thomas Edison Museum a few times growing up. So I kind of felt a small affinity. I didn't know like the harsh story about Thomas Edison that we all found out about later.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I can't remember where were we? We were just kind of talking about you were saying like King of the Hill. That the people in power didn't realize what this show was going to do.
Yeah.
And now if you watch any somewhat adult oriented or mature, whatever you want to call them, try not to equate it to porn. Any adult themed or mature themed animated show, it's a half rip off of The Simpsons. I mean, the structure, the way they talk, the way the acts break, the way the banter is like, and it's many shows. I feel the show I'm working on now is doing a really good job, but sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
You can cut this part out.
Absolutely, man. No worries at all.
But yeah. So The Simpsons created a way of doing it right.
Yeah.
So and being there on the front lines and seeing it work. I mean, there were many things about the production itself that I've shaken many a fist at.
Yeah.
When I was there, stuff like that. But in essence, the process was done right. And all I've seen in the last kind of 10 years, not that, rewind that. Many times I just see people actively not doing it right. And it wasn't until somewhat recently that I started to realize, oh, they weren't around when it was done right. So they don't even know. Because they're younger or they came into the industry from another venue. So there's a lot of struggles that go on in production these days that just don't have to be. Now, granted, not everyone has all the information. to understand how the what the left hand doesn't always know, even what the right hand's experiencing, to even know how they feel. So, and with the pandemic really hurt communication for obvious reasons. So, anyway, but I did want to jump on what you were saying earlier about King of the Hill. That show, I mean, it was a very successful show.
Oh yeah.
But I don't think it ever got its due, because there are some fantastic episodes. I didn't even watch it all that much. I've probably seen, the first half of the run, at least. And I watched a number of episodes. I have good friends with people who are on that show. Sean Cashman, who you had on, he was my director on. I was his AD on the one episode. He was the Simpsons director.
Mm-hmm.
I was his assistant director. And we're good friends. But like,
such a kind person.
Yeah, he's great. But they did some great stuff on that show, and it was really well written. I heard stories about how Greg Daniels would talk about story and how to curate story, and then I would walk upstairs to visit a friend or whatever, and there was all these recycling bins all around, because we would be throwing out drawings left and right, because we would whatever, and I would see some beautiful drawings of Dale, and this one drawing of Dale I found I might have kept it. I probably have it in the folder somewhere. When he's wearing a dress, he's got a little bit of rouge and lipstick, and it was like this beautiful draftsmanship on this drawing, and it was just sitting in a recycling bin. And I think that was an original drawing. And then I don't know if I saw this on someone's desk while they were working on it or in a recycling bin, but it was a close up of Cotton.
Mm-hmm.
And for anyone who's listening right now, Cotton is the character who was Hank Hill's dad, but he was a short guy whose shins got blown off in Vietnam or whatever. But
Jazzy machine gun.
Yeah. Oh, it was in World War II.
World War II.
Yeah.
The big one.
So, but his face was just all wrinkles.
Mm-hmm.
And what ended up on air, once it goes through the watered down machine of overseas cleanup and stuff like that, and since that style was hard to capture, properly, the way that things were cleaned up and put on cells back then, was still Xerox. It didn't really honor the beautiful artwork that went into it. But this drawing of Cotton had all these wrinkles on his face that were really intricately describing the contour of his face, and it was like beautiful drawing. And I just said to myself, man, it's not gonna look like that on the television.
I would have walked out with recycling bins every single day. Like I said, That show is so special. There's a few shows that I look back on fondly, like I do with that one. Like Hey Arnold was one of them. That one's the one that kind of taught me how to be a good human being. My mom taught me how to be a good person and a good human being. But Hey Arnold as a kid, it's the first show I ever watched as a kid where it didn't talk down to you for being a kid, right? Craig Bartlett did something so special. And then when I get a little bit older and I start having and trying to develop the sense of humor or the sensibility that I would like to have, I find King of the Hill, right? King of the Hill, like I was just talking about with The Simpsons. King of the Hill, Futurama, The Simpsons. You can throw Family Guy in there. You can throw American Dad. On the outside, looking at those shows, they all have one thing in common that most folks are going to see, especially from the older generation. Oh, that's just a dick and fart joke type of humor. It's not really good humor. Like that type. But when you peel back the layers of that show, of those shows in particular, you start to find out, like I had Eric Kaplan on not too long ago. He's the guy that wrote Jurassic Bark for Futurama, the one that makes everybody cry, where Fry loses his dog, brings it back to modern day, and ends up having to let him go. But you find out like the writing room for both The Simpsons, both King of the Hill, Futurama, all those shows, they're all fucking Harvard, Yale grads, Stanford grads, all these guys. They're intelligent people. And then you find, like I tried telling my mom, when my mom talked about, she saw my oldest son, Hayden, she's like, you're letting him watch that shit? And she's talking about The Simpsons. Like, yeah, Mom, this is a funny show and it's a smart show. No, it's dumb. And I go and I pull up the credits and I was like, Stanford grad, Harvard grad, Yale grad. You told me that these schools were all supposed to be something when we were younger. I was like, how can this show be stupid if they have all of these people from all of these prestigious schools? And then that just killed the conversation right away. I was right, mom was wrong. I felt vindicated that you guys were working on some smart shit, but in particular, man, like King of the Hill, I don't think there's another show out there that has, in 12 seasons, they said everything, but they still have more to say. I really hope last year when they came out and they said that they were definitely going to be doing a revisit to King of the Hill. I really hope that happens. If anybody deserves it, but Beavis and Butthead has gotten 3 renewals and 3 revives, or whatever you want to call them, revival shows, reboots. That's the word I was looking for. King of the Hill deserves one, even if it's just for 1 season. Fuck, give me 6 hours worth. Just give me 6 hours. That's 12 episodes. I want to see these characters, even though some of them are gone. Sadly, Lucky's gone. Fuck, who was that? That was the singer. Shit, can't think of his name. He'll come back later. And then Brittany Murphy is gone. Luann, she passed away too a few years back.
Still got a good sound alike though.
Yeah, 100%. But even then, if you just want to write those characters off, it's just, I would love to.
Oh, you can't write off Luann.
I mean, you can, but you can't. I'm pretty sure there's some smart folks that work on this. I think they could figure something out.
They can figure it, but I wouldn't though. She's too funny.
Absolutely. I mean, it's Dale and Boomhauer, man. I don't know what it was. I think Boomhauer just sounded like so many people that, I grew up with as far as like my mom's family. Even though they weren't from Texas, they all had the damn man, you couldn't understand, and they just talk, talk. That's what they sounded like. So it was just, it felt homely. Yeah. It felt very homely. But getting it back to you and the Simpsons, man. What with working on these characters, obviously you said you watched this in college a little bit, and you fall in love with the show. You hear people start talking about your show. Now, with the characters in particular, everybody's got their favorite that they love to draw. So I'm not asking you what your favorite is. I'm asking you, which character did you slip into like a comfortable pair of shoes or a nice pair of socks, man? Which character was the easiest to slip into?
Homer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably even draw a decent drawing with him with my eyes closed, literally.
So easy about him,
but just he's not easy.
No. Why was that easy to slip into though? Why was that easy for you guys to slip into for you?
The shapes are nice. They're once you actually understood what was going on, his acting was funny. He had such multi-layered comedy going on with him.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say personality wise, it would probably be Mo.
Yeah,
like Mo is a bit of my alter ego as well. Angry guy from New Jersey or whatever. So although I had a real hard time, not always, I shouldn't say that, but I would make his arms too short. I have a tendency to make arms too short sometimes. I think I'm foreshortening them, and then they end up looking short, and it's not till I look back on it the next day where I realize, oh my God, what did I do? But Mo is one of my. I always ask my director whenever I would work for someone, is like, give me Mo stuff. Yeah, Mo stuff. I want to do Mo stuff. And then Grandpa, but yeah. So Mo, Homer, and Grandpa.
Yeah, and then same question but opposite. Who was the hardest character for you to slip into? Whether it was just dialogue, whether it was drawing, whether it was acting out, which one was the hardest one? Which is going to be most trouble?
Oh, geez. Who was hard to draw was the Reverend's wife, Helen Lovejoy. She had a weird shaped head, and her eyes didn't like, and she didn't have any personality in her face. Like those shapes on her face, there were a number. No one's coming to mind to answer. Yeah, no one's coming to nothing. No one in particular is coming to mind to answer your question in the broader sense.
Mm-hmm.
But there were many characters on the show that the designs, because of the way that the Simpsons world was, the universe, they were difficult to give expression to and bring to life. No one else is really. I'll tell you what was hard to draw. I can kind of tell you things like that. Was Lisa's hair was very hard to draw.
That one's come up a couple times. Yeah.
You'd have to. Everyone had their own way of doing it. You had to create a certain shape of roundness, like the halo, and where you were going to break it up. Because your eye, when you're animating, your eye has to track where things go. Like Bart was easy because he had 9 spikes. You draw one on this side, one on this side, one in the middle, and then one in the middle, and then one in the middle, and then you just fill it in and it's done.
Yeah.
So that was easy. But Lisa you had to keep the same number. Maggie was real tough because then Maggie's hair on the model sheets were not suspiciously, what's the word I'm looking for? The model sheets were deceivingly difficult
Yeah, deceptive.
because so we would have new people come on the show and then they would start moving the characters around, but they would look wrong. We'd tell them that. I was like, well, I was using the model. I was like, yeah, but the model doesn't work. Like the model works from that angle. So we had all these cheats. Like you had to make Homer's nose come out at a certain angle compared to his head. And if you did, and you had to cheat the eyes because if the eyes were perfect and then they turned, he looked like he looked dead.
Mm-hmm.
So there were all these little cheats and things that we did to make them like that. And sometimes it would be because one of the artists or one of the directors had a way of drawing that. And then that became like, oh, I really like that. So we would start emulating each other and drawing it. Oh, yeah, I saw Scott do this the other day. So I started to do that, when I drew Homer and stuff like that. And, all this stuff also, too, influences the way I draw today. Influence, when I worked on the next show I worked on, the next show I worked on was Family Guy, which was easy to draw to a certain extent. But then the next one after that was Randy Cunningham, Ninth Grade Ninja, which couldn't look more different than The Simpsons. But and even my own personal work over the years, the thing about drawing on The Simpsons was there were these really forced geometrical shapes. So some people had difficult drawing them because they were used to using anatomy to create their figures, but the Simpsons characters really didn't have anatomy. Over the years we gave them a little bit more anatomy, but to be able to draw so clearly with such clear shapes that really stood out and had strong poses, and without being bogged down in details that a more complicated design may look, really helped me draw anything. Because there's a character I'm drawing now. Actually, I'm wearing the crew Christmas gift that they gave us this year, who I kind of draw him like Homer, just because that's how his body is, and then I end up shaving it down a little bit and doing some things to it. But the clarity of drawing and posing that many of us on The Simpsons learned from was invaluable to carry us through our careers today. It's just when you have trouble drawing something, you're not sure about something, we were trained to break it down into this most simplest form that just helps us draw whatever we need to. Like if I will never say I can't draw that.
Yeah.
Like I can say I don't know what that looks like to draw, but you give me a picture of it and I can figure out the shapes and I can draw it. Like there's nothing someone like us can't draw because we're animators. We draw it from every angle. We just got to figure out what the shape is. Once we know what the shape is, we can draw anything.
Yeah.
And working on The Simpsons, since it was so shape oriented, it trained us that way. And The Simpsons was the best training ground for, I would say, there's like 100 of us out there who were developed these skills on this show that we were doing it the way that they did it old school. We were all worked on paper then, but we were doing animation, we were doing animated poses, we were labeling our drawings, we had to, then I learned timing. Once you learn timing and how the drawings actually work, the in-betweens that aren't even being done, then you actually start changing the way you're animating to compensate for what how it will be timed, stuff like that. And we just learned all these parts of it. That's where I first learned real storyboarding. I mean, I learned how to storyboard in college, but and there were so many good artists on it. We were just, like I said, we were learning from each other and growing our own techniques. So it was this little microcosm, something super lightning in a bottle, something super duper special that happened. A span of, I would say, 12 years on that show. And so I think back to your original question, or something I was saying a while ago. I wish I saw it as that special when it was there. I mean, we all have the gift of hindsight.
Yeah.
You know,
Knowing what you know now, what do you think is the most important thing that you learned, not only from that show, but you probably still use on a day-to-day basis?
well, I don't know if it was because of the show or it was just, I mean, I was there for 15 years, but phrasing,
Hmm.
when you're animating dialogue, so many people who aren't as experienced and they may be brilliant, but they're just not as experienced, will do a pose for like all these words, but you don't do a pose for a word. You do a pose for a phrase. You know, we don't move like this every time we say something. You know, move like this every time we say something. Two poses. You know, and then maybe a little head bob or this, that, or the other. And economic posing, where it's just like, I remember I did too many poses of him going up the stairs, and I was like, these poses are too close to each other, like physically close to each other. Um, but he has to go from here to here. So I was like, well, what if I put him in the middle and then just changed his legs? So I turned two poses into one. And then I started to learn how to be economic
Hmm.
with that. So, and then I came up, I mean, I came up with it. I'm sure other people say it, but I used to say, you know, when I would go over someone's work and say, you're doing too many poses, you always want to think about it. As this is especially important storyboarding now. As many, you want to do it in as few poses as possible, but as many as you need.
Yeah.
Um, and that really freed me up to, like, you know, when you start breaking down the dialogue into phrases, what's the sound someone's making while they're talking like this? And they talk like this right now and stuff like that. So you really start to hear the performance,
Hmm.
not analyze the meaning of the words, you know. And with acting, when you're with any acting, but you know, with animation, since you're basically acting in slow motion, it's you're animating emotions. The words carry the meaning,
That makes
stuff like
sense,
that.
man. And so doing that hindsight for just a little bit, if you could go back and you could tell your younger self, get in that DeLorean, you could go back in time and say, Josh, just came back from the future. What would you tell yourself while you're on The Simpsons? Anything in particular you'd say?
I mean, yeah, more what I was saying earlier. Just smell it, stop and smell the roses more, dude.
Yeah.
Um, I started on that show when I was 22 years old, or 23, no, 22, and that was the only job I had for
Mhm.
many years. So I didn't, you know, when I started to hear stories about other studios, I had friends who went to Disney and then came back because it was too hard or not a good environment. Like I heard many horror stories from Disney and you know things like that. But at the same time, I still didn't really understand that the problems I had when I was there, um, the problems I had when I was there were everywhere.
Mhm.
So you might as well enjoy where you are. And then I also would have told myself not to work my body so hard,
Yeah.
you know, because I'm feeling the effects of it today. And I can easily see how I basically, you know, and I started to do it in college. Since college, I started training myself not to listen to my body
Mhm.
and defy it and work myself so hard that it, you know, starts to affect, you know, your emotional and mental states, which then starts to affect your physical state, which then starts to affect your emotional and mental states. And then it's the snake eating its own tail. And the demands that were put on all of us, you know, even to this day, I mean, where I'm working right now is actually one of the nicest environments, even though I'm working from home, that I've ever been on. People are great. Um, the show is really good, and it's just every time I start to get freak out about, oh, they're going to do this and then this is going to happen, and then they give us more people, or we get more time, or this, that, and the other. And no one's pointing any fingers, no one's blaming anyone, no one's breathing down our neck, and I was just like, this is great, but it's rare. And back in the day, and it was also, you know, I'm a product of the 80s and the 90s. In the 90s, snark and sarcasm and being angry at things was just in the zeitgeist.
Is in vogue. Yeah.
It's the way we grew up. And I'm not saying it's bad because it kind of, toughens your skin. But, looking back now, the way things are, I think the woke pendulum swings, a little too much in some ways sometimes too. But, man, we were angry about everything.
Yeah.
All of us were. And so I went from walking down the hallway, I was in the first 3 years of my career, an experienced background artist was walking with me. She asked me, how's your day so far? I was like, great, this is the best part of my day. I'm arriving here at work. And she's like, oh my God, this is the best part of your day. And I thought to myself, why would you not think that? I thought to myself, I was just like, well, then why are you still here? Why don't you leave? And then cut to a number of years later, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm killing myself to try to get something done, cursing out whoever I can curse out. That said, it was fun. But yeah, that's kind of it. Don't, stop to smell the roses, appreciate what you are actually doing. I'll tell myself a few of those stories I just told here a little earlier about, how much animation I'm actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and anytime I did a scene I liked, I Xeroxed it. And I probably have a larger the second largest archive of Simpsons drawings, aside from the Simpsons drawings archive. I have hundreds and hundreds of scenes upstairs.
Say that
I
5 times
started.
fast.
What's that?
I said say that 5 times fast. You've got
Hundreds
more
of-
Simpsons archives than the Simpsons
yeah.
archives has archives.
Um, and then I started turning them into pencil tests. I scanned them and started to turn them into pencil tests on the computer, and that's a lot of work I found out. So I petered out very quickly on that. I was gonna, and I could take the sound from the shows and put them in, but I didn't. But now more recently, I kind of, when you asked me to do this podcast, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be talking about the Simpsons, I'm sure, and I don't have any Simpsons work on my website. So on my Instagram, I recently, which really started to feel good, started posting those videos of the stuff that I used to do on the show, and it feels good because now it's like it's just sort of like, hey, look what I did. Like everyone wants to be recognized and seen, and
Absolutely.
the anonymity of being an animator, like I was saying earlier, is nice because you basically can be a person, and then the work that you do, that you put your love into, is famous, and that's a great feeling. Um, but you do get lost in a crowd in that regard, like, so. And there, like I said, like those King of the Hill drawings and other people's drawings, there's some really great stuff that I've done and other people have done and stuff like that. Like we want to see it. I love, if anyone listening is not following him, follow Sandro Clouseau.
Man, I love Sandro.
Yeah, I have a couple of his books, the great, and he's one of the few people that I have notifications on for Instagram for when he posts stuff. But like, when I'm such a drawing nerd, that when Glenn Keane used to publish all his rough drawings and things, I was like, look at that. I have one of Glenn Keane's drawings from Aladdin. I think it's his drawing. It looks like his drawing. And but like, so part of me is proud of my work, and I want people to see it in its form. But I also want people to see, look how this is done. Isn't this great? Isn't this something? Like I did this little for the episode where the Who visits Springfield. Me and Sean were really stoked about the Who, and we studied. We printed out still, because there was no computers that did this back then. We had to like take pictures of the television, and step frame through their motions and stuff. So I studied Keith Moon's movements and stuff. And if you watch the show, Keith Moon's maybe about that big on the television. But I was able to post my drawings a few weeks ago of those, have him playing the drums and stuff like that. So, yeah. Again, I don't remember what your original question was. I'm a big mouth.
Oh, no, you're perfectly fine, man. It's just the advice you'd give yourself. So you broke it down pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's something we could all learn from. That always comes up. It comes up, man, probably every other podcast when I ask that question. If you go back in time, and it's all just appreciating the ride. I hear it so many times. I don't know if you're a sports fan, but I'm a huge NBA fan. And so there's a few podcasts that I listen to that are NBA centric. And the first thing they always say is like, looking back on your career, what would you tell your younger self, or what would you do differently? He's like, man, I'd probably appreciate the ride, because if you're all shooting for the NBA trophy at the end of the year, right? The NBA finals, you win it, you get a trophy. He was like, you get lost in the moment when you're supposed to be experiencing the moment. He's like, the journey is just as much, if not more important than the end result. It's everybody coming together. It's everybody growing together. I mean, you said you started there at 22 years old. It's wild to think that at such a young age, you guys are on something that is going to stand the test of time. It doesn't matter if The Simpsons ends tomorrow. It doesn't matter if the fucking Simpsons ends 20 years from now. That show's never going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like Mickey Mouse, like you said. It's those two characters that stick out, synonymous all around the world: Superman, Batman, Bart Simpson, Homer Simpson. Right? It's Coca-Cola and Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck and Goofy, fucking Mo and Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns has always been my favorite character. I fucking love that character so much, man.
Oh, he was hard to draw. His head
Everybody
had
said
this
he's hard, yeah.
weird this weird angle that, like, if they just designed it more like animation friendly, it would have. But like, so that he was hard to get his head.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, man, it's the journey is what everybody says they wish they would have paid attention to just a tad bit more. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't wait 20 years from now and having hindsight as that buddy in your front pocket, man. Think about it now. Enjoy the journey. It sucks sometimes, but sometimes it's good. You get to do a lot of shit along the way.
Yeah,
So,
enjoy it. Like, if you enjoy it, like
yeah.
I love animating stuff.
Mhm.
So like, and believe me, I most of my time on the show was spent sitting there in the zone, and it
Mhm.
was great. Um, but there were, there you come across people who have been complaining since it started. Like, then why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Like, why are you even here? Like, and why are you bad mouthing the very thing that I'm devoting my life to? Now, granted, I'm older now, probably about as old as some of those people were back then, and I understand what they're talking about now.
Yeah.
But like, and I have my problems with the industry. Anyone who knows me knows that. But they also know that, like, I love this thing,
Mhm.
and the only reason I'm not going to be in this industry anymore is if I can't do the thing that I love.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of I'm having a little bit of a back and forth with it now. The process of making these shows has changed a lot, and it's different. And so there's some things I need to reconcile still and stuff like that. But first of all, what the hell else am I gonna do? I have no marketable skills aside from making TV shows, which most of the public can't do. But I just thought, I don't want, if I ever get to that point where this person just hates being here and hates doing the job and just hates. It's just like, I gotta get out. I'll go into real estate. I'll do whatever I need to do to, like, to earn a living. But I'm not going to just feel, you know, I get, I feel a little bit of certain things because I feel the industry has changed enough, especially since now 2D animation is just like hand drawn 2D animation, and it's hit such a peak before it was taken away. Like, it could have gone to such heights where something like the movie Klaus was just the standard.
Yeah.
Um, that I have a little heartbreak, like almost every day, if not weekly, about what we don't have anymore.
Yeah.
And then, to a certain extent, what I don't have anymore. There's a lot. We do a lot of rough thumbnails and storyboarding, and then it gets put into animatic and then there's rewrites, and then while they're rewriting that, we're roughing out another batch of rewriting. I spent not too long ago. I spent 2 months just doing thumbnails.
Mhm.
And I was just like, and luckily our show was great. And I talked to some, my director and some of our producer and stuff, just like we were going to get to clean up our own board. And because a lot of times the board would be cleaned up in a rush by other artists who were thrown on it to get it out the door.
Yeah.
So we don't feel this ownership. I don't even have something. I mean, I can't Xerox anything now, but like I don't even have a finished thing to save and show. So luckily, after that, we got some of our work back as opposed to being put onto someone, and it was great. And I got to finish. I got to do this acting because the vocal performances are so rich and give you so much. And that's my favorite thing to do is I got in this business to be an animator. I learned how to do everything else, but I'm an animator who does these other things. And I was the director. I don't know. We haven't talked about this. I was an assistant director on The Simpsons for, I guess, better. I did nine full episodes as an assistant director, which, depending on your director, you're either a glorified layout artist, where basically you're a helper, or you're a second director. Now, luckily, you can tell I'm somewhat gregarious and headstrong. Like I want to do a lot of things. Like I was basically a co-director. When they were busy doing their thing, I was handing out work and I was giving directions, stuff like that. And then I directed. I was a full-on director once I was on Randy Cunningham for 10 years, and I loved it. But it was difficult because at times I wanted to do more animating. I wanted to do more of this. Instead you're kind of curating, and I believe me, I did plenty of work on the shows myself. But a friend of mine said, like, you got to take off your animator hat and you got to put on your director hat sometimes. And at first I was like, well, what's the difference? You just know. But I started to understand what the difference is. One's management and one's crew.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years ago, things started to change to the point where I was doing more management and way more management than artistry. And the artistry I was doing was rushed and under duress. And I was just like, well, and I said to myself, well, this is the job, dude. If you don't, this is the job. So suck it up and do it. And that's what I would say to myself over the years too when things got rough. I was like, well, you love doing this. You got to deal with all that. So that's all part of that job.
Embrace the suck.
And that's another thing I would have told. Yeah, embrace the suck, because you don't get to do this if you don't do that. But not too long ago, the ratio became too great for me, and I was just like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do. I want to direct, but not under these circumstances.
Yeah.
So I stopped, and then I started to go, and then I became. I don't want to say I went back into storyboarding because technically, I mean, it's not necessary. Aside from two jobs, I have never been a storyboard artist before that. I was a character layout artist. I learned all about storyboarding, and then I was a director. I did when I was on Family Guy. I was a storyboard revisionist, which was a great education because it was early-ish in the days of digital workflow, and we're using a program called Storyboard Pro, which you've probably heard people talk of. So as a revisionist, you have to revise the work that's already been done, and I was a very advanced crew person, so I knew how to do these things. But I learned I had to take apart someone's scene and like, why did they put it together like this? Because no one was practiced at being an economic and healthy workflow within the software. It was all new to us. So, but everything was a mess. It looked fine when you just looked at it, but when I had to go in and fix something, it was a mess.
Yeah.
So then I learned how to do it right and or what not to do, and I also learned how to pull things apart. I learned the software and like, why can't I got to do this? So I learned all these shortcuts. So it was great. And then I started doing work well, first they found out I could animate, so they started giving me all these animation things to do. I have some of it on my website. And then I started working in retakes, where I knew the people in retakes. It was Greg Lovell, Lindsay Pollard, and Debbie Winslow. I think that was her name at the time. And they all knew me. I knew them from Simpsons. My first day on Family Guy was me being brought around and like just saying hi to about 30 people I already knew.
Yeah.
So then I was just working for them, and then my buddy Sean Cashman called me up and asked me if I wanted to direct on Randy Cunningham, and then so did that, and that was for 4 years with a 6 month hiatus where I worked on Wally Kazam for 6 months, which that was a great little show. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but they were songs in that show, and I could not stop singing those songs. But and then I went back to Randy Cunningham, and then towards the end of Randy Cunningham, my buddy Jim Schumann came on and said, "Hey, do you want to come direct over at DreamWorks?"
Mm-hmm.
And I started on another project at DreamWorks that got canceled before it even got started, and then ended up on Spirit Riding Free, which is the most proud I have ever been about a project I've worked on. The Spirit Riding Free, great show. We basically combined Little House on the Prairie with John Ford movies,
Mm-hmm.
but very heartfelt, real a lot of life lessons. We kind of touched upon some things that a lot of animated shows just sort of skirted over or sugar coated it, but we showed kids learning life lessons and how to deal with it. I would say that's the show I'm the most proud of. Randy Cunningham was the best creative experience I've ever had, and The Simpsons was just
Organized chaos.
it was organized chaos. But it's funny because people know me for, again, I've shaken my many a fist at many a things over the years, but it was a glorious creative curation, you want to call it that. Like what was going on during the Disney Renaissance. I know I'm sort of repeating myself from before. There was a smaller version, and like a small microcosm, like I said, that was happening there, and it was just like we just did so much good work.
Yeah. And it bled out
So
all through the 90s.
yeah, and I've been lucky that most of the shows I've been on have gone for quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
so I haven't had many jobs. You know, since then, I've jumped around a little bit, so I've had more, but like it was like 15 years, and then a year and a half, 4 years, and then 6 years, and then I've had a handful here and there after that. But this new show I'm on called Crepopolis, it's the new Dan Harmon show.
Mm-hmm.
Supposed to air sometime in 2023. Keep an eye out for it, folks.
Beautiful.
But this this may go for a while. And then I'm also working on a project called Jasmine and Skeet.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to jasmineandskeet.com, Jasmine with two Z's and Skeet with a K, you'll see what we're doing there. We're basically developing these characters to have a large web presence, and then turn that into an animated series at some point.
Yeah.
But
Writing the two down so I can make sure I put them in the show notes below so people can
yeah,
check
yeah, yeah.
All right.
So yeah, so my point there just was that because of the long runs that I've had, good long runs, I haven't had many jobs, which is uncommon for an animation artist.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I've looked at the credits, or I've just talked to folks, and then you see not so much the turnaround in a bad sense, because I work in the kitchen for a living, so the level that we're doing at the place I'm at now, it's most people burn out within a year tops because of the pace we do. Right, we got a slow lulls, but when it gets busy, it gets really busy, and the scale that we're doing as far as the technique, the food. I mean, during the peak of our season, I'd say almost 90+% of our veg is coming from that are on the plate is coming from a farm. So we've got hands-on with some of the freshest produce I've ever had, some of the best produce I've ever had. It's gotten to the point where we've gotten so big where some of the farmers are starting to grow stuff. We're asking them to grow specifically for us so we can put it on the plate at specific times of the year. I mean, so, it's and a lot, like I draw so many lines or so many correlations to animation because it's a super creative endeavor, both cooking and drawing, or any kind of artistic endeavor. It's you're tapping into a piece of yourself that most people are afraid to, because nobody wants to be told that their artistic endeavors is shit, right? So drawing something for somebody, cooking something for somebody is very much of somebody giving you a piece of themselves, right? And like I said, nobody likes rejection, but the turnaround rate or the washout rate, whatever you want to call it, is pretty high once you start doing like we're doing. We're chasing our first Michelin star, which is like you guys' Emmy, right? So that's like the creme of the creme. Doesn't get any higher than that, right? Oscar, I guess, gets higher than that, but Emmy is what most people in TV chase for. And then for us, it's the Michelin. James Beard is another one we're chasing, so when I see somebody that hasn't been, 72 different credits and they've got some time, it shows me that person is a tactician, or not a tactician. That's the wrong word. Maybe a tactician is the right word. And I'm just
craftsman.
Craftsman for sure. That's one. But you guys, craftsman is a better one. I use that one all the time. You guys are masters at your crafts. You guys are putting in that Bruce Lee rule, that 10,000 hour rule, right? Or that 10,000 rule, So I love seeing that, because you guys, the more reps you get with anything, the better you're going to get. And I can't remember what animator said it, but they said you got to throw out 10,000 drawings before you start getting good. So you might as well start now, is essentially what it was when you boil it down to. But like I said, man, I really enjoy what you guys and gals do in the industry. If it wasn't for, stuff like the Iron Giant behind you, man, I mean, obviously I told you before, the next time, I'm hoping within the next month or so, I can start putting some cartoon characters back on this wall. Because if it wasn't for these guys, or these, I've got Snoopy on my hand, I've got Ninja Turtles on my arm. If it wasn't for things like that, I mean, if you were ever a fan of Ed, Edd and Eddy, if it wasn't for characters like Plank, man, it wasn't for characters like Batman, I don't know what I'd be into, right? I wouldn't have a fun childhood, I could tell you that. I wouldn't have a fun adulthood, I could tell you that. So you guys really pushed innovation, especially with the Simpsons. I mean, without this show, there's so many things that don't happen. I mean, Simpsons did it, right? That was the thing when I was growing up, man. Everybody would point when South Park, when all three of the big three went at it, Simpsons, South Park, and Family Guy, I was like, holy shit. This is the MCU before I knew what the MCU was. Right? It was the most wild shit I had ever seen at such a young age, man. So, like I said, you guys.
Funny story about. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just saying you guys fucking crushed it, is what I was getting at. But I can't wait to hear what you're saying about this, because I love when this.
Well, fun story about South Park. For those of you who don't know, the original South Park was just this Christmas special where Santa and Jesus have a fight match in a ring, but it was just on videotape. And I remember someone brought it to work. Oh, you got to watch this thing that I found, and we watched it in someone's office, and then that tape got copied and copied, so we all had copies of it. But like we were on The Simpsons watching this what even is this and then it turned into South Park. Crazy.
It's wild to see how far that show, and the fact every time I hear somebody say there's no way you can do that in today's day and age, I point to South Park. I was like, the fuck you.
Well, the thing is, because they own it.
Yeah, they're grandfathered in at this point too.
Yeah, well, they're grandfathered in, but they're their own bosses, and they can just do what they want, and because they're the ones who do it. I also hear they work people to death, but that's not. So most of the time, I mean, so many times, great things that were done get redone not so great because somebody somewhere was afraid of offending someone. I'll have to tell you this some story off the air. But like, I'm tongue tied because I can't get out what I'm thinking.
Oh, it's no problem at all, man. Well, we've hit that hour and a half mark, and I figure what we can do. I'd love to have you back on down the road. We got some guests lined up, but maybe right around about a month or two after the baby's born, sometime in May or June, I can get you back on. We can talk about another point in time in your career. Because, like I said, we talked about that first. Most of this was Simpsons related because that's how I found out about you. Tim said you gotta have my buddy Josh on. I was like, absolutely, man. So anytime I can get you guys on that have Brad led to Tim led to you, Sean led to Mark, and I think Sean
Yeah, I
actually led.
worked for Mark. I was Mark's AD for two or three shows.
He's
I was
such a
Mark's
cool
AD for a
dude.
little bit.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
such a cool dude. And I don't know if you saw, but I had Sandro Cluzo on early last year too.
Oh, you
And
did? No, I haven't seen that.
yes.
I watched Tim's video, then
Mhm.
I watched most of Sean's video, and then sometimes like when I'm working, like I can't always listen to people being interviewed while I'm working.
Yeah.
I have to do it when I'm driving or like in the morning, but I'm not driving anymore because it's pandemic. So, but then I didn't want to be too influenced by your show
Mhm.
before I sat down and talked to you. So I kind of
Absolutely.
purposely stayed away because I was looking through your videos. I was like, oh, because I saw you had Nick Raniere. Nick Raniere is one of my heroes.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, yeah, there was a social thing with a friend of a friend where he was at, and I was sick. And when I found out he ended up showing up, I was like, I don't. But then again, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't always meet your heroes.
Oh man, I
But
used to
like,
hear that, but I've met not all of them yet, because there's one in particular that I'm hoping one day will be on the show, and that's Gendy Tartakovsky. In my opinion,
yeah,
he is the Mount Rushmore 4 times over for me. I mean, there's nothing against any other person that's ever worked in this industry. What Chuck Jones, Walt Disney, what Tex Avery is to folks, insert Bob Clampett, anybody you want to put in there, man. Max Fleischer, whoever. That's what Gendy is to me. Gendy is my
got
Tex
to.
and Chuck Jones.
That's great. I mean, my Chuck Jones and Tex Avery is Chuck Jones and Tex
Yeah.
Avery. Because when I was a kid, that's what was on.
Yeah.
Like there was probably a tenth or a fifth of the animation on when I was a kid than there is
Yeah.
today, and like it was all Tom and Jerry, Bugs, the Looney Tunes, the Flintstones, and Tex Avery cartoons like
Mm-hmm.
Woody Woodpecker. Like that was our animation.
Yeah, that
I have
Hanna-Barbera
a really
library.
good. Oh, here's my Tex Avery book right here. Oh yeah, let me just show you real quick. And I got like my this is my coffee table bookshelf. Like
Uh-huh.
my how to draw bookshelf is upstairs in my office.
What's your favorite, or
Um,
before we rotate in the fans' questions, what's your favorite art of book? Do you have one that sticks out?
art of.
Yeah. Got one that we should definitely pick up?
Well, okay. Well, I don't know how accurate this is, but it's the first things that pop into my mind. There is this one book. Is it here? Oh yeah. So this came out when I was in college, and it opened up my world. Are you familiar with this one?
No.
It's called Art of the Art of Animation, or just Art of Animation. Disney's Art of Animation, from Mickey Mouse to Beauty and the Beast. And not only does it have one of these, I can't remember what the term is, the covers that move. That
Lenticular.
um, oh, see, I must have Xerox this and had it hung up.
Oh,
But like, this is a page from this book, I think,
mhm.
and like, there's drawings in here from Aladdin. Oh, and then actually the making of Aladdin, that's upstairs because it's a how to draw book.
Oh, that's an expensive
Um,
too.
yeah, no, I found a copy for $8 like 10 years ago, and I got that. So I went at work and went at home. Where is that here? Do I have that? Oh, here it is. The Aladdin. Here it is. This like, but like to see actual animation drawings like this,
Mm-hmm.
or design, like it opened up, it just opened up my world on drawing and filmmaking, animated filmmaking, and then this as well, the making of Aladdin. Like it just basically told you how to do it. All these
Yeah.
animation drawings in there. So these have a special place in my heart. I don't look at them very often anymore, mostly because it's burned into my brain, everything in these books. And then, I mean, there's always the illusion of life, but
Oh yeah.
uh, I'd say the Tarzan Chronicles, it's called, because it really celebrated drawing.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they made it, the making of this movie, animated movies, books were kind of cliche at that point, but it just celebrated drawing in such a way that it really hit me well. But yeah, though, so these three, I still got some other coffee table books. I had this big old 9 Old Men book that I still haven't finished
Is that the
reading.
one they drew as they pleased?
No, it's the first one, but that one's really great too. That's upstairs. This one, came out before that one. The one you're talking
Oh,
about has a
John
lot
wrote
of
that one.
drawings.
Yeah, John
The one you're
Kamen wrote that one.
yeah. Oh, I can't stand up on here. But yeah, so I would say those. I mean, The Illusion of Life is fantastic, but it's almost like it's almost like I don't want to say the Bible, but it's just
Well, that's definitely the Bible. That's what everybody refers to it as, for
yeah.
sure.
I mean, it was historically it's the most important animation book about animation ever
Hmm.
because it basically said this is how we did it. No one did it before us. This is why we did it. This is our thinking,
The
and
fundamentals.
that the fundamentals. It's all there, 12 principles of animation, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, we'll talk about other books at our next venture,
Absolutely.
next
And then,
episode.
so before we rotate into the fans' questions, you already answered that one with those books right there, but you get 4 people on your Mount Rushmore plus 1 honorable mention. Who's on Josh's Mount Rushmore?
People or things? People or things?
It could be anything that's influenced you in
Okay.
your entire career. People, places, food, music.
Well, dang, it sort of changed over the years. At one time, Billy Joel would have been on there, but I would say Raiders of the Lost Ark,
Mm-hmm.
Aladdin. Right. See, it's going to all be movies. These are the things that
Oh,
sort
that's
of
perfectly
are
fine.
the
This
filter
is
of my world.
Yeah, this is the thing that's influenced you in your career.
Kind of influenced me in my career.
Mhm.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, Aladdin, Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Classics.
I'm going to say this. I don't know if I would say this every time, but I'm going to say The Incredibles.
Oh, that's such a perfect movie too. They
And
did
I
the
know I didn't say Iron Giant, but Iron Giant's one of the best things ever.
hmm
But in its essence, it wasn't doing anything new. It did the new thing where it took CG and made it look too, stuff. But like, but what the Incredibles did, because I love many CG projects, but I also have a love hate with that. Was like they're also the reason why the thing I love most in the world has
Yeah.
mostly gone away. Um, but the Incredibles, what Brad Bird did, he showed us what we can do.
hmm
I mean, he started with this, but like he showed us this is what can be being. This is what can be. Blah, this is what can. I'm going to say this wrong. Edit this. Um, this is what can be being done. So how can I
Yeah.
say?
This is what can be done.
Yeah, okay. So what Brad Bird did with the Incredibles is he basically said this is what can be done. We can
Mhm.
do this adult vibe for a childlike story and the scope of it. The James Bondness, the cinema scope and the regular scope, literally of what he did in that movie. So those are the things I kind of hold on to. Aladdin, in a way, is a version of Raiders of the Lost Ark, but the comedy and the heart that was put in that, and the beautiful animation, how much they pushed it. And Raiders of the Lost Ark's a perfect movie. Um, Nothing else. That's my favorite of all time. That heavily influences like my whole view on whatever my eyes lay themselves upon. And then Roger Rabbit. I don't know if we have time, but I have an interesting story about when I first was introduced to Roger Rabbit. But that blew my mind back then, and then just that, and then his whole thing about all I want to do is make people laugh, and because that's all I wanted to do is make people laugh and make people feel good and stuff. So and do it through my work and my drawings. And plus the fact it was this, some would say over animated. I don't necessarily say that, but like this technological wonder between how they did it and then the actual animation that was done and the style, and it was still harkening back to an age that half of the adult population weren't even alive to even experience. But it definitely harkened back to things that I experienced. So yeah, those that's my Mount Rushmore. Thank you for asking me that question. I'm surprised at some of my answers.
Oh man, I enjoyed them. So we're gonna rotate into, like I said, I did this the last couple times where I didn't write any fans questions down, but I wrote some ones that I enjoyed asking that I thought would be a lot of fun. This one's fun. Nobody's answered it yet because they didn't want to offend anybody, but I think it would be fun. So we'll throw the caveat on there. They could be dead or alive. If you were to start an animation studio and you needed a writer, a director, an animator, and a voice actor, who would you pick out to start your animation studio?
A writer?
Alive or dead.
I mean, I'm not familiar with all the writers and stuff like that, but an animation studio writer, what? I picked Chuck Austin. I worked with Chuck on Randy Cunningham. We became good friends, and he was the one that was telling me about that Greg Daniels stuff while he was on King of the Hill. Yeah. We learned about the story, and me and Chuck, although we have a real disagreement about the Captain America movie, I'll just say that I love the first Captain America movie.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just leave it at that. But aside from that discrepancy with my friend, I love talking story with him because with a writer, that's why you got a writer's room, because you got a number of different perspectives coming in and they make jokes better, and this person got a bagel this morning and that made him think of this and that and the other.
Yeah.
So it's not like one writer does that. But I know my buddy Chuck, he knows story, man. And you can have, I watched this movie the other day. I don't want to say what it was. There's this one person in it, and I was like, I always like her movies. She's really great. It's actually very funny, but it was just like, really? And I just kind of kept saying that. I'm like, really? And then it ended, and I was like, I kind of wish I didn't watch that. It was a comedy, so I wasn't.
What's it rhyme with? What's it rhyme with?
No, I'll tell you later. So story is what is the skeleton that everything hangs on. So writer. So give me the categories again.
You had a writer, a director, an animator, and a voice actor.
A director was me.
All right, then. So an animator and a voice actor.
No. I'm not going to say that. I'm joking.
Well, you can throw yourself in there. This is your list.
Gosh, I mean, I start an animation studio. I mean, I could say Brad Bird's a director and stuff like that, but like that's, I don't know. Oh, well, I was gonna say one of my favorite directors who's sort of under the most of the radars is Doug Liman. Who directed Swingers and The Bourne Identity, amongst many other things, The Edge of Tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, we're talking anime. What's that?
Bourne Identity is such a fantastic movie. Him fucking up those dudes with a Bic pen. Jesus Christ, man. So great.
I love Edge of Tomorrow, I think is fantastic. If you watch any of the behind the scenes or listen to him talk about how that movie was made, it was made in a way that you would think this is not a way to make a movie.
Yeah.
So animation director, gosh, I mean, if I was to make the studio, it would be people that, I mean, that's the thing is like, if I'm to do that now, I'm going to bring my crew, actually, you know what? Jim Schumann, my buddy, Jim Schumann, if I was to create a studio and I needed a director, it'd be Jim. So who else? Animators.
You got an
Nick
animator,
Ranieri.
Nick Ranieri, man. I was wondering if you were going to give the nod to Nick or Sam.
Yeah, I would say like his drawing sensibility out of all. I mean, I'm a huge fan of all those guys: Andres Deja, Will Finn, and obviously Glenn Keane, Mark Henn, James Baxter. Oh, you know what? I would say James Baxter. He's probably the one artist slash animator that I'm intimidated by.
Yeah.
He's like, I actually interviewed him once at DreamWorks. There was a lunchtime interview. Lunchtime. They did little things at lunchtime for people who wanted to come, and he was in town, and they asked him to be if he would be interviewed, and since he was the animation director or whatever on Spirit, and I was on Spirit's show, uh, they asked uh, they asked me to do it. So I interviewed him, and sweetest guy, and he actually even came and took an hour to conference meet with us about drawing horses. A lot of the things that he learned. He's like, and of course, he was just, I don't know. I mean, what you guys probably know some of this stuff. I mean, well, just tell us, man. Like all the little things you found out. And he told us some great things about that. But he's just, it's. I don't even want to say it's savant like how good he is. It's like he was blessed with magic,
Yeah.
and like it almost is just like I can't even aspire to be as good as him. So, but I don't think I'll ever be as good as Nick Ranieri either. But his sensibility of the way he draws faces and characters and stuff is very similar to my own. So I feel like I have an affinity for that.
And then the last one, a voice actor.
Kevin Michael Richardson probably because he's just so
Man, the
versatile.
man. Yeah, he's so good.
He was on Randy Cunningham, and I went to a lot of records for that, and I hear his voice all the time everywhere else. So like, he's not necessarily doesn't do many starring character voices, but like you could just have him do everyone else.
Mm-hmm. It's a big part of Cow and Chicken for sure, as long as many other shows that were just a part of my childhood. So this next one, I have fun with this one. You plus 5 animation dinner guests. Who's invited and what are you bringing? Or no, not what are you bringing? What are you eating? So what are you going to serve 5 animation guests, dead or alive? And who are those guests?
Oh, geez, well, this is sort of the same thing.
Kind of, but you got to
Um,
bring food into it.
well, I'm okay. Well, Brad Bird,
Okay.
Nick Ranieri.
And this is for a night of
Um,
stimulating conversation too. So that
yeah,
wasn't
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm just gonna go with the All Stars. Eric Goldberg. You get Brad Bird and Eric Goldberg in a room talking about animation. You're not gonna hear the night will never end.
everybody's like this.
Yeah, well, it's
Please
just both of
continue.
those guys are like just like love talking about what they do. How many people do I have left?
You got 2 left.
Two left. Um, Live or dead?
Yep, alive or dead.
Frank and Ollie.
And that's going to be a great. What are you serving? What are you serving or what
What
are
am
you
I?
eating? Yeah,
Pizza.
man,
It's gotta be pizza.
absolutely, man. Because it's going to be picking up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down. You
Yeah,
can't knife and fork that conversation.
yeah. So those,
Uh,
I don't know how talkative Nick Ranieri is. From what I know of him, he's probably not. But
oh no, he can go.
those, does he? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had him
I'll have to
on.
watch your episode.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. He doesn't live too far from here. He lives out in Orlando
He's
too.
got. Oh, he moved back to Florida.
Yeah.
He had. I haven't looked at it for quite a long time because I'm not on Facebook as much. But he has a great Nick Ranieri animator Facebook page.
Yes.
That's like, and he tells stories and stuff like
Hmm.
that. So like, I used to visit that page like every day. He worked on Roger Rabbit.
Yep.
So yeah, so those I would just sit back. I wouldn't say anything. I mean, obviously, anyone listening to this now, and I was like, man, this guy Josh, he would not stop talking. But like, Like I wouldn't say anything. I would just listen to those five guys talk about it all. That'd be great.
Absolutely, man. That'd be interesting to see. If you could go back in time to be a fly on the wall for the creation of any cartoon character, who would it be and why?
Gosh. It's weird because I feel like I have been a fly on the wall with because we have seen so much behind the scenes footage of how they came up with the beast
Mhm.
and the genie, but the creation of a character usually happens over time. Um, you know what? It's funny because I have a huge collectible collection of Stitch
Mhm.
collectibles, and he's one of my favorites. Like that movie has a real special place in my heart because I got I got some volatility inside me that movie I identify with quite well, and it's just some great family and love um um issues dealt with in that, but like the the catharsis that character goes through, it's like I want to see where Chris Sanders like how like the seed of that and how this silly idea of a little blue alien who looks like what he looks like and wreaks havoc actually becomes a very endearing character
Mhm.
who teaches lessons back and like such growth that doesn't feel sudden. It's very earned.
Pays off
But
for sure.
this weird little character, like the reason that I think Lilo and Stitch was so good, and I don't think I'm the only one who has talked about this, is they did it in Florida mostly, from what I understand.
Yep.
I could be wrong about this, maybe. And it was sort of just happening under the radar. They were working on some other big movie at the time. I can't remember which one it was. So they weren't really paying attention to that. So there weren't a lot of maybe there weren't a lot of notes, and they had a lot of free reign, and they didn't have to do a lot of reanimate a lot of scenes. So like what was animated came out of a lot of creativity. It's one of the most beautifully animated movies. The colors are amazing.
Mhm.
And I'm colorblind, and I can even tell. And Stitch is just one of my favorite characters. Um, because he's all emotion, but I don't want to say that either because there's a lot of things. But so I had another point. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. The thing I got from that one is you got to check out three of my episodes: Chris Sanders, Nick Ranieri, and Sandra Cluzo.
Okay, very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
he goes into detail about Stitch's character arc, how he got started,
Oh,
where that
great.
whole Stitch character came from. It was just a voice he would do whenever he would call somebody on the phone when he was in the
Yeah,
studio and
yeah.
stuff like that's how that does the genesis of that one.
Kind
So
of like
he
that Howie Mandel voice that he used to do.
was the same thing with Brad Bird and Edna from The Incredibles. Brad Bird
Right.
did Fantastic Four better than the Fantastic Four has ever, or and up until this point will ever do the Fantastic
Yeah,
Four.
yeah, yeah,
That's a
yeah.
phenomenal movie. We just watched that one. Like I said, I got an 18-month-old. I've watched 101 Dalmatians in the last 3 days 7 times, which I'm not mad at. This that is
That's a good one.
it is like I wish there was a few. I got to talk to Floyd Norman last year. Sadly, I talked to him for 2 hours. Sadly, we could only release 30 minutes of it because there was a glitch in the upload. So not over half of the interview
Oh
got
no.
destroyed. And we tried to get it back, but it was unwatchable. It was unlistenable. So
Oh,
we only got like the first 30 minutes, but that first 30 minutes was talking about my favorite Disney movie of all time, which is The Jungle Book. So he went
okay.
into detail, and then like right as he was like hitting to like the meat of it, it fucking cuts out, and it sucks because we went super deep, and it was just very candid. He was very open. But we talk 101 Dalmatians, and that movie, like I know Walt hated it for the longest time. It gave Ken Anderson a fucking heart attack, right? So, Ken Anderson being the art director, ladies and gentlemen, for that one. When that movie comes out, Walt hates it. hates the style, hates the European push. There was a lot of like progressive modernism going on at that time when it came to art. So Walt didn't like it. The first thing he said is like, "You fucking ruined me. This is horrible." And then as it grew, and Floyd talked about this, as the couple years passed by before Walt had passed away, before Jungle Book dropped, he had this turn of heart and said how endearing that movie was. But there's a scene in particular, and I pointed out every single time. There's two scenes in particular in 101 Dalmatians. One of them is just the opening credits where Pongo is narrating how Roger is the bachelor, and then he's trying to find a suitable mate. And it's that scene where Pongo's looking down at the magazines, and he's seeing like, is chivalry dead or something, chivalry along those lines. And it's the lady in the bathing suit, and then he looks up, and then he looks so disgusted and so mad for just a split second. Just that whole, he has an old man facial expression on his face that I find something so endearing to that character, because he goes from this lackadaisical dog to something that's real right there, and then he goes back to that, oh, it's a cartoon, but that facial feature he has. But the one in particular scene that I absolutely love, that I pause it every single time, it's when they're in the mansion with Horace and Jasper, and Sergeant Tibbs is already there, and the entire background goes red. So you're already seeing the anger emotion from from Jasper, and from Horace, right? And then Sergeant Tibbs, the cat, is going like this to all of the puppies behind him. So you've got this beautifully dark red background. You're reading the room, essentially. You're seeing the anger from Jasper as he's getting ready to hit with the crowbar, and then all of the fear in the cat and in the puppies. I pause it because it's beautiful. The colors, the contrast in the colors, the art style they chose, the posing, just everything about that is so perfect. And when I say I've watched it 7 times, no bullshit, from start to finish, 7 times in the last couple of days, and I'm not mad at it. It's a beautiful movie. It's a perfect movie. It keeps growing on me every time I watch it. It's, at this point, there's 2 things that I can probably probably recite from start to finish: Where the Wild Things Are, and 101 Dalmatians. And both of them are because Cooper, that's his favorite book and that's his favorite movie. And anytime he gets up, the first thing he points, he's like, dogs, dogs, dogs. Right. So I've really enjoyed watching that movie. So just those 2 scenes. I don't know how we fucking got into 101 Dalmatians, but it's just a fucking beautiful movie.
Yeah, I love that since I was a kid. I'm a big dog guy too, even though now I got cats.
Yeah.
But I came across it somewhat recently. It might have been when I was at the vet. They were playing it on the big TV. I can't quite recall. But like one thing that I noticed, which I've always known, but like animation wise, is how it takes its time.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many slow, quiet acting scenes where characters aren't moving real snappily and stuff. And there's some raw. I mean, of course, we've all seen the pencil test of Roger juggling almost dropping his pipe and things like that, and just with the dancing, and it's just so meticulous. They sit on characters. The characters move slowly. They shift subtly. All these very difficult things to animate, hand drawn, and it's just, and the designs are so exaggerated. To see such exaggerated um, characters move so realistically, and then of course cartoonily when necessary. And then there's all the anthropomorphic personality they put dogs, and the style is great. It's definitely, it the pace of it takes some getting used to when you watch it now,
Mm-hmm.
coming from where we are coming from. But that still, like, the again, and because of the Xerox technique that they were using to do the cleanup onto the cells, it embraces the fact it's a drawing.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are other movies like Cats Don't Dance is a hugely underrated, under the radar movie. That is, if you like the movie Singing in the Rain, you'll flip and love, Cats Don't Dance if you like animation. But that is probably the most beautifully cleaned up animated film ever. I had a couple friends work on that. Chris Hubbard and Matthew Schofield, Daisy Schofield. I think I know some other people too, although she wasn't Daisy Schofield then. So they would show me some drawings they'd bring home and how they got that beautiful line work. And Hercules is a great cleaned up movie. Beautiful line work.
One of the best
Um,
soundtracks too.
yeah, it really is. I like Hercules. It's not a great movie, but it's beautifully animated, and the music is so good. I just wish it was a little bit better.
Do you know who they're supposedly making a live action Hercules, like they're doing with most of their live action
Yeah.
movies. Um, if that goes, I've got the perfect lineup for the muses. I want Destiny's Child back, so I need Destiny's Child to reunite. I want Lizzo, and I want
Yeah.
the Queen. It's not Beyonce, it is Mary J. Blige. I absolutely love Mary J. Blige. I think that five for the muses, Rob Iger, you can have that one for free. Bob, take this one, please. Cast those five ladies as the muses in Hercules. I would love to see it. For the life of me, I can't remember the name of the song, and we'll kind of end it with this one. But Meg has the best song on that entire soundtrack. There's a couple things like I said, Cooper absolutely the 101 Dalmatians is a movie. He absolutely loves Encanto too. It's something about the colors. It's something about the songs. There's just he loves that the Surface Pressure song, best song on the entire soundtrack for Encanto. And then it's just he loves all of that shit. So getting to, like I said, just getting to see it. Once you start having kids and you get to see them,
Mm-hmm.
experience it for the first time. Like it's funny because we sit down and eat, and he points over to where Alexa is because he knows we have to say Alexa play Disney favorites or Alexa play Surface Pressure. So when he hears us say Alexa play Surface Pressure, like he's looking at it and then he looks back really, so he stoops his little shoulders and he starts smiling really really big, and then this is how he dances. So whenever it goes he's doing it with his hands for the drum solo. So yeah, like I said, it's really fun getting to watch that. But like I said, Bob, we need those five ladies for the music. So
Yeah, so what you're talking about with watching kids, I don't have children, but and I used to go to Disneyland at least once a month, if not more. But a while back there was the World of Color at California Adventure, and part of that show was Frozen. It was probably about a year after the movie came out. I don't know. And of course, "Let It Go" was one
oh
of the
yeah.
songs that was going. And there's this little girl in front. There's this guy in front of me with his little girl on his shoulders, and she is belting out "Let It Go" like there is no tomorrow. And it was the sweetest thing. And I was, I do what I do for me.
Mm-hmm.
I like doing it. I'm my own demographic, and I enjoy the work. But I also feel an inherent calling to connect with the world through
Mm-hmm.
my work. Like I learned a lot of things, from television and cartoons when I was a kid and stuff like that, like how to deal with stuff. And I used to say, if some kid in Minnesota is watching Spirit and and has some realization because of something that I or we did, that's really special. And I'm sitting here because probably because it all started for me on a rainy day. We watched Dumbo in the clubhouse at camp,
Yeah.
and it just always stuck with me and stuff. So like to do something to plant seeds in others
Mm-hmm.
for that will help them grow into being what they are going to be in life, whether it's just a hobbyist like yourself or an actual craftsman.
Yeah.
Um, to not having children in a way has like almost lit a fire under my butt to to do those things. So like to work on a show that nobody watches, it's just like, well, then what's the point? Like, well, the point is you get to go to work and draw. I'm like, nah, for me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I do. That is great. And if I grew up, under harsher, if I had a harsher life growing up, I may just appreciate the fact I'm breathing,
Yeah.
but I didn't. And I need the equation or the formula of enjoying what I do greatly and having it connect with others. Like especially when you produce art, it's like producing art, but you turn off the lights. Like, what's the point?
Absolutely.
Well, people need to see it, and you want to connect with it. You want people, you know. So, but yeah, so seeing Disneyland through the eyes of children and stuff like that, and movies to a certain extent. when we'd go to the movie theater and there were kids there, like, okay, what is the ratio? How many kids are actually here? One good thing about living in Los Angeles when you go to see animated movies is there's a lot of adults there who work
Yeah.
in the business and want to see it anyway. You'll have like a half, back in the day, a Disney movie comes out, you go see the 8:30 p.m. show of it, and it's half full with adults.
Man, what a time. There's no better way to end that than that. Like I said, Josh, can't wait to have you back on.
Oh, I love
If
it.
folks want to find you on the old social medias, they want to see what Josh is up to, where can they find you?
JoshuaTaback.com. Go there and it just brings you to my hub page. It was a link tree type of page before there was link tree. But you could also the one thing I'm the most active on is Instagram. So that's Josh TBCK at Josh TBCK.
Beautiful. And all those
But
links for the website and your Instagram
yeah,
will be in the links below.
great. Yeah. So if you just go to my Instagram, I think I got my website up there, at the top of the profile. You just click it. I always tell people, like new people in the industry who are trying to break in, stuff like that. It's like, you want to be easy to find. Don't come up with some, when people come up with real interesting names for their email or their website. I was just like, I don't know who that is. I don't know what that means. That's the thing, love bug, love bug 2687. It's like, I'm not going to know that that's you. I'm going to see your name on a resume and I'm going to want to see who John Schmo is. So I'm going to look up John Schmo. And if I can't find johnschmo.com, I guess you're not getting the job.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a lot of knowledge that's been dropped on this one, but the most important piece of knowledge that Josh has dropped: don't pick up the handle Ladybug 8786. It's not, it doesn't work for anybody. But nonetheless, man, he's been Josh. I've been enjoying this. It's been the What's in My Head podcast, and this has been another piece of your childhood. Good night.